The first gunshot shattered the silence. A deafening boom echoed through the bank lobby as masked robbers stormed in, weapons raised. "Everyone on the ground!" the leader bellowed. Panic erupted. Customers screamed. A security guard reached for his radio, but a rifle butt to the face sent him crashing to the floor. A masked thug grabbed a hostage at random, yanking a man up by his collar. Jason Statham. The gang had no idea who they'd just chosen. "Move it!" the thug snarled, shoving the gun to Jason's ribs. Jason remained silent, still, unreadable. The leader sneered. "That's right, mate. You're nobody now." Jason's eyes flicked to the vault. The robbery was in motion. The gang was focused on the money, their formation sloppy. Their mistake. A nervous bank teller fumbled with the lock. The gang's attention shifted, for just a second. That was all Jason needed. He exhaled slowly, muscles coiling like a predator ready to strike. The robbers thought they had control. They had no idea their hostage was about to become their worst nightmare. Before continue, like and subscribe to catch Jason Statham's epic face-off with robbers, and comment where you're watching from today. The air inside the bank was thick with fear. Customers and employees huddled together, too afraid to move as the masked robbers barked orders. Guns waved in the air, the metallic clicks of loading rounds punctuating the chaos. "Move it! Nobody does anything stupid!" the leader snarled, scanning the terrified faces. One of the robbers, a jittery man gripping a shotgun, spotted Jason among the customers. His eyes flickered with uncertainty. Jason's calm demeanor stood out against the panic surrounding him. "You get up!" The robber yanked Jason by the arm, shoving him forward. Jason didn't resist. His expression remained unreadable as they pushed him toward the vault. The gang thought they had control. They had no idea Jason was already in control. Jason noted every detail as he walked. One robber held his pistol too loosely, his trigger finger twitching nervously. Another kept shifting his weight, stealing glances at the exit, likely the weak link in the crew. The leader, though confident, overcompensated, barking orders to maintain dominance. They forced Jason inside the vault, where a terrified bank manager fumbled to enter the code. His hands trembled as he punched the numbers, beads of sweat forming on his brow. Jason moved deliberately, his posture relaxed. Let them believe they were in charge. Let them get comfortable. One of the robbers, a cocky thug with a scar running down his cheek, sneered at Jason. "What, you think this is a joke? You're not scared?" Jason said nothing, just watched. Scarface smirked, turning his back as the vault door slowly swung open. Mistake. The tension in Jason's jaw tightened slightly. The pieces were all in place. One misstep was all he needed. And then, it happened. Scarface glanced away, distracted for just a second. The leader barked something at the crew. The nervous one adjusted his grip, exposing his wrist. Jason had seen enough. They had no idea they'd just locked themselves in a room with the last man they should have chosen. A rough shove sent Jason stumbling forward. The cold steel of a pistol pressed against his spine. "Move it!" the leader growled. Inside the vault, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The bank manager stood frozen, eyes darting between Jason and the robbers, hands trembling over the stacks of neatly bundled cash. Jason kept his posture loose, his hands slightly raised, not in surrender, but in calculation. He was waiting, watching. The leader stepped closer, his voice impatient. "I said hurry up." Scarface smirked as he positioned himself near the vault door, his pistol lazily dangling at his side. The nervous one fidgeted, his grip adjusting on the shotgun. Jason's fingers twitched slightly. And then, opportunity. Scarface glanced at the cash. The nervous one shifted his stance. The leader turned his head for just a second. Jason moved. Fast. His elbow shot back, striking the leader's throat with pinpoint precision. The man gagged, stumbling. Before the others could react, Jason spun, grabbing Scarface's wrist and twisting it sharply. A sickening snap echoed in the confined space as the gun clattered to the floor. Scarface screamed, clutching his now useless hand. The nervous one raised his shotgun, but Jason was already there. He shoved the broken-wrist thug into him, sending them both crashing against the steel shelves lining the vault. Panic erupted. The remaining 2 robbers outside the vault spun around at the sound of the struggle. "The hell's going on in there?" one shouted. Inside, Jason's movements were controlled, precise. He grabbed the fallen pistol, turned, and threw it like a hammer, striking the nearest robber square in the jaw. The man crumpled, unconscious before he hit the ground. The leader, still coughing from the throat strike, stumbled to his feet, drawing his weapon. Jason was faster. With one swift kick, he sent the vault door slamming shut. The final 2 robbers were now locked outside. The leader barely had time to raise his gun before Jason grabbed his arm, twisting it inward. A shot fired, bang, but it went wild, ricocheting off the metal walls. Jason yanked the weapon free, ejecting the magazine in a single, fluid motion. The leader staggered backward, his confidence now replaced by raw fear. A slow smile formed on Jason's face as he cracked his knuckles. "Now, let's talk." The robbers were realizing, too late, that they hadn't taken a hostage. They had trapped themselves with a nightmare. The silence inside the vault shattered with a desperate gunshot. One of the remaining robbers had scrambled for a fallen weapon, his hands shaking as he fired wildly in Jason's direction. Too late. Jason had already moved. He rolled low, the bullet ricocheting off the steel vault wall. Before the shooter could get off another shot, Jason was on him. A brutal palm strike to the wrist sent the gun flying. A second strike, harder, landed against the robber's throat. He gasped, clutching at his neck as his knees buckled. The leader, still recovering from the earlier hit, saw his men crumbling. Panic flickered in his eyes, but he clenched his jaw. "Get him!" he roared. Scarface, still nursing his broken wrist, wasn't done yet. With a pained grimace, he yanked a switchblade from his belt and lunged. Jason sidestepped cleanly, catching Scarface's arm mid-strike. Snap! A guttural scream ripped through the vault as Jason snapped his forearm like a twig, the blade clattering to the floor. The leader saw his chance. He lunged, swinging a crowbar with everything he had. Jason ducked. The heavy metal bar whistled past his head, smashing into the vault wall with a deafening clang. The impact made the leader stumble, just enough for Jason to step in. He grabbed the man by the collar and, boom! A crushing knee strike to the gut. The leader gagged violently, doubling over, his breath completely stolen from his lungs. Jason didn't let go. He yanked the leader upright, locking eyes with him. Now, there was no fight left in the man, only fear. Scarface was curled on the floor, cradling his shattered arm. The gunman was unconscious. The last robber? Cowering against the back wall, hands raised. Jason slowly released the leader's collar, letting him crumple to the ground. The vault door rattled. The 2 robbers outside had finally realized something was wrong. "Boss? What's going on in there?" Jason smirked, stepping over the groaning bodies on the floor. The leader gasped for air, barely able to lift his head. The pounding on the vault door grew louder. Jason reached down, grabbing the leader's gun from the floor. With a flick of a wrist, he ejected the magazine and sent it skidding across the room. Then he crouched down, gripping the leader's chin and forcing him to meet his gaze. "You walked in here thinking you had control," Jason said, his voice low, calm, dangerous. "That was your first mistake." The leader swallowed hard. Jason let go of his face, standing up as the pounding at the door became frantic. Jason wasn't just taking out the gang. He was about to take back the entire bank. The vault was a graveyard of broken men. But the leader refused to be one of them. Gasping, he clawed his way toward the exit. His ribs screamed in pain, his breath came in ragged wheezes, but his mind had one last card to play: escape. His boots staggered across the blood-stained vault floor as he reached the half-open door. Jason took a slow step forward, watching him. The leader burst through, grabbing the closest hostage in a wild panic, a young woman cowering near the teller counter. The bank fell silent. "Back off or she dies," he roared, his arm wrapping tightly around her neck. His hands trembled, but he forced the barrel of a gun against her temple. Jason stepped out of the vault. His movements were slow, controlled, not a hint of fear. The leader's eyes flicked across the room. His gang, wiped out. His men outside, still clueless. His plan, a disaster. His only advantage was the hostage. "That's right," he sneered, tightening his grip on the woman. "You think you're tough? Try me." The air in the bank was suffocating. The hostages were frozen, barely breathing. Even the security guard, still zip-tied on the ground, didn't dare move. Jason stopped, exactly 7 feet away. His eyes locked onto the leader's hands. The leader smirked, thinking he had him cornered. "On your knees. Hands behind your head." Jason sighed. "You really don't get it, do you?" The leader's smirk faltered. Jason moved. A blur, lightning-fast precision. One explosive pivot forward, his hand shooting toward the leader's wrist. A single pressure point strike. The leader's fingers spasmed. His grip shattered. The gun fell. Jason's other hand caught it mid-air. Before the leader could react. Crack. A savage elbow struck to the jaw. The leader's eyes rolled back as his knees buckled. He collapsed onto the marble floor. The hostage stumbled free, gasping. Jason caught her shoulder, steadying her. The room was dead silent. Jason Statham had just ended the entire fight with a single, unstoppable move. The bank was a disaster zone. Furniture smashed. Glass shattered. Robbers sprawled unconscious across the floor. For a long moment, no one moved. The hostages, still huddled near the counters, stared at Jason like they were seeing something unreal. Some were whispering, others clutching each other, struggling to comprehend what just happened. The young woman Jason had saved rubbed her wrist, her breathing shaky. Who is he? Then, sirens. A flood of blue and red lights flashed through the bank's windows. The muffled thunder of police boots grew louder as officers stormed the entrance, weapons raised. "Drop your..." They froze. Their eyes darted across the scene, the wreckage, the groaning criminals, and one man standing in the middle of it all. Jason Statham. No weapon, no fear. Just standing there, calm, unshaken. The lead officer took half a step forward. "What the hell?" Jason didn't answer. He turned away, and walked past them like they weren't even there. No explanations. No waiting for thanks. No need for recognition. The officers parted as he moved. Hostages whispered as they watched him disappear through the bank doors. He had done his job. That was enough. The world had just witnessed something they would never forget. Not just the brutal takedown of a gang of armed robbers. Not just a single man standing against impossible odds. But the cold, undeniable truth. Jason Statham was never a hostage. He was the real threat. Outside the bank, the police were still piecing together what had happened. Hostages whispered, some in awe, others still shaken. The officer in charge stared at the wreckage, then at the spot where Jason had been just seconds ago. Where the hell did he go? But Jason was already gone. A figure vanishing into the city, the sirens wailing behind him. No words. No recognition. No need for applause. Because men like Jason Statham don't do it for glory. They do it because someone has to. Some men aren't victims. Some men don't beg for mercy. Some men are the reason criminals don't sleep at night.